I'd like to call the meeting to order. Kathy, please do the roll call.
Mrs. Riedel?
Here.
Mrs. Staley?
Here.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Here.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Kathy, please do the roll call.
Mrs. Riedel?
Here.
Mrs. Staley?
Here.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Here.
Mr. Andreessen?
Hello.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Mr. Everett?
Here.
Mrs. Zielinski?
Okay, can you please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move on to communications. First is public communication, which I don't believe we have any. Okay, we'll move on to MTA.
Good evening. Tonight we have our sixth grade team, social workers, and speech language pathologists joining us. Here are the highlights from their teams. In the sixth grade classrooms, you can find our students increasing their proficiency in the area of argumentative writing, studying the history of the democracy of the Roman Republic, participating in a math pie contest to commemorate Pi Day, and creating and maintaining model pond ecosystems that will soon house their African dwarf frogs. They also had a physics lesson in real time at iFly, where they experienced what they learned in their science class during their energy, forces, and motion unit as they skydived in a wind tunnel. Our social work team at MES just wrapped up the Kids Connection program, which is a before-school program that has been going strong for the last 20 years. This program supports students experiencing a death or divorce in their family. Our social workers are also working with the Mokina Educational Foundation to fund school supply kits for families that can't afford them. Our speech language pathologists work alongside our social workers in providing services from the preschool age all the way up to 8th grade. Our social workers and speech pathologists can be seen conducting play-based assessments and preschool screenings to identify and provide programming to at-risk preschoolers. Within the last years, our speech language pathologists screened every MES student and have implemented interventions and speech labs to bring identified students up to speed with their articulation skills. They case manage and provide therapy to numerous students in all three buildings so that they may have a voice, a language base they need to succeed in all academic areas, and the skills they need to be effective communicators within their classrooms. Finally, we would like to thank Debbie Blank for again organizing a Volley for a Cure after a 3-year hiatus. It was a great success as we raised $2,508 for the Cancer Support Center. The school staff played amazingly, won all 3 games, and everyone in attendance had a great time. Thank you for all who donated a basket, played in the game, bought a t-shirt, worked the concession stand, or were there to cheer on the teams. It all helped to make a great success. Thank you.
Thank you. CSA? MEF? PTA? Okay, Board of Education. On then 2 presentations. The first presentation is with our architects. Dr. Shaw, I think you do the introduction.
Thank you. So tonight, our architect is going to give the annual update. We have Justin from Wold Architect, and also in the audience, we have our team members from ESG, Jeff and Christian, representing the engineering team.
So again, this is really just a recap to let you all know what we've accomplished since 2020. Next slide is what we're looking to accomplish this year. So we've got the initial phase of the playground improvements, equipment project, minor tuck pointing and exterior lintel repairs, door and flooring upgrades, preschool for all renovations project that we're working on right now, replacing unit ventilators in the northeast wing. We're replacing an air handler, and then also providing surge protection at the main switchgear. That's all in the plan for this year. And then looking ahead, this is a few of the projects we have slated for the next 2 to 3 years for that building. Next, we'll look at the intermediate school. Again, it's kind of set up in the same format. So the first part there is what we've been able to accomplish in the last few years since 2020. At the intermediate, we have, again, the initial phase for expanded hard surface play at Willowcrest Road. We have efflorescence on the exterior of the building we're going to clean off, surge protection at the main switchgear, and there's also an RTU that's going to be replaced that currently serves the school offices. That's, again, all this year. Next slide is looking ahead to what we have planned for the next 2 to 3 years for that building. And then if we move to the junior high, starts again with a reminder of what we've been able to accomplish the last few years. We don't have anything currently planned at the junior high this summer based on the priorities and the projects we've identified with the group that we've worked with. The other 2 schools just have a higher need this year. But we do have, if we go to the next slide, kind of a recap of what we do have established for the next 2 to 3 years. And then the final, it kind of goes into the facility matrix, and this just kind of details out all those projects that were listed above, where they slot in year-wise, and also budgets that we have established for them. That's it.
Any questions for the architect? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we will do the certified staffing presentation.
Lindsay, you want to switch gears?
Sure.
You have to stop sharing the other one and then. All right, so looking into 2023-24, if you go to the next slide, this is a picture of our enrollment over the years. Our enrollment dropped into the mid-1500s about 6 years ago, and it's remained relatively stable ever since. In the last few years, we've graduated some larger 8th grade cohorts, and they've been replaced by smaller kindergarten groups. But the enrollments we're projecting next year to stay stable at around 1,565 students. That's because every cohort seems to be gaining 1 or 2 students on average each year. So if you look at for example, the numbers in the 2022-2023 column, those are our official enrollments as of September 30th in the fall that were reported to ISB. The enrollments in 2023-24 in that column take what the current enrollment is at the grade level today and then roll it up into next year. So for example, we had 162 4th graders at MIS as of September 30th this year. Our current enrollment in 4th grade is 164. So we're anticipating to have 164 5th graders next year. That trend has stayed that trend of gaining 1 or 2 students each year in the middle of the year has stayed pretty constant on average for grade level. Some go up, some go down. There are some outliers here and there, but we really don't have any new construction that's bringing students into our district. What we do have, though, are homes where students, maybe the houses were built in the 90s, early 2000s. Students have graduated, moved on. Parents are empty nesters and now selling to young families, and so we're seeing kids move into our district at a much greater rate than perhaps they did in the past. Go to the next slide. Overall, with MES, we're projecting an enrollment, just a slight enrollment decrease. The same with Mokina Junior High. Mokina Intermediate School will see a few more students. Again, that's that 160 students coming in at the elementary, at kindergarten. And that we have a large third grade group that's matriculating up to Mokina Intermediate School next year. Slide. As far as class size guidelines are concerned, have been the staffing guidelines we've used for a number of years. They are based on a staffing study done in 2019-2020 by Dr. White, but also evidence-based funding formula. Next slide. These are the guidelines as they exist today. We preferred ranges of 20 to 23 and change it for average class size in Mokina Elementary, 22 to 25 in Mokina Intermediate, and 23 to 25 at the junior high. Next slide. As far as the core staffing recommendation is concerned, this takes just the total number of students and divides it by 7 FTE per grade level, which is our current staffing level. And just about all of our grade level average class sizes are within our target range. The exceptions would be 3rd and 4th grade. Those are a little bit higher. The only item of note is that overall enrollment does not take out any students that are individualized classes where they are in self-contained classrooms for most of the day and wouldn't be in that 7 average. And that number can change. So that number is not inclusive of it. So our actual average class size would be a little bit under those numbers that are there. So given the fact that we are stable in terms of our enrollment overall, and we're either on target or just barely in the concern range, we're not recommending any core staffing change, other reductions or increases. Slide. In terms of staffing for non-core next year, this is the matrix we're looking at. We are looking at a very slight uptick in exploratory, a 0.2 increase. That is that 0.2 is the small increase for our strings music teacher at Mokina Intermediate School, splitting both the duty of teaching grade level music in 4th and 5th grade, but also getting over to the junior high in anticipation of an increased number of sectionals due to growth in the strings program next year. The numbers in blue were increases that happened either right at the beginning of the year or mid-year this year, and we are recommending to keep those. So while those were increases for this school year, we are planning on retaining all those staff. Go to the next slide. Kind of explain what those blue components are. We added 1 FTE to Mokina Elementary School this year for special services teaching. That was just due to students being identified as having needs, but also some move-ins to the district. At Mokina Intermediate School, we had in the past a social worker who was a 0.6. We had posted that position about a year and a half ago, Allison. We had last year a contract person at a 0.6. When you contract outside for related services, you end up paying more if you're using a company to provide that staffing. It was actually, same cost to have somebody here full time rather than paying a contract company and having somebody here 3 days a week. So for the same money, we're providing a better service. So technically, FTE, we are going up. However, it's not an additional expenditure. At Mokina Junior High, we did add some speech language services here at that building. And then again, the orchestra 0.2 FTE increase in anticipation, even though the teacher's assignment is Mokina Intermediate, it's for the sectionals at the junior high. So only an ask of 0.2 FTE for next year. PFA, those numbers remain stable. That program has, is generally almost always full, but we do have a certain limit in terms of the amount of space that we have for that program. So the next slide, basically the areas that we're continuing to watch, 3rd and 4th grade, that core grade level enrollment is going to be something we're going to continue to monitor. Also monitoring enrollment of students with special learning needs. And this year there are no programmatic changes, no changes in staffing that require either additional or reduction in staffing. Are there any questions?
Questions for Dr. Cohen? Okay. Next presentation is the 5-year strategic plan. Dr. Shaw is already on the move. Yes.
Our current year budget, 6-year chart, 11-year chart, a little history, and then what assumptions we're using to come to the projections, and then we'll take a look at each of the funds individually. The operating funds include our education fund, operations and maintenance, transportation, IMRF, social security, working cash, and tort. We will not be doing any projections for our non-operating funds. So the first few slides are historical projections. So we take a look at what we've done over the past 5 years. This is from our budget from fiscal year 18. The next one's 19. So you can take a look at these if you want and kind of see what the history looked like, because there's so many things that are outside of our control. So in 2019, we had the prepayment of property taxes, which ended with a high fund balance in 2018. And then we had some purposeful spend down to try to get within the board parameters of 35 to 65% of our fund balance. In 2020, we had the limiting rate referendum pass, and then the education fund, how we had those projections, we saw a downtick based on what those projections and assumptions look like in that year. In 2021, we started to receive the referendum money in the O&M fund, and that's what happened, the big item in 2021. In 22, we saw that our goal is to have the red line between the blue lines. The blue lines are the board policy of 35 and 65%. So when we get our red line in between those blue lines, we have a very healthy financial projection. And then this is this year's. So last year, across the top, you see the AFR FY 2022. Last year, we had a spike in fund balance because we couldn't spend our money for the projects that we had slated in our Fund 21 due to some of those external forces outside of our control, the stone quarry strike, supply chain issues. So we have a decrease in our red line for the budget of 23 coming down significantly as we fund those projects. And then going forward, where our budget with our set of assumptions is right on the top part of the 35 to 65% fund balance. This is the data in an aggregate form. It just kind of shows that the last few years we had a purposeful spend down to get between that 35 and 65%, and the arrow is pointing to trying to be within those parameters. So here's our current 5-year projection. So this is the slide that shows our current 5-year projection with our budget of FY23, the red line getting back into the middle, and then being slightly above the 65% of expenses going forward based on our set of assumptions. You can kind of see the first section of graph is the education fund. Is it slightly coming up all through those 5 years, and in 2028 it does drop. The O&M fund, Fund 20, that also has healthy fund balances, as does transportation. Fund 50, you do see a slight decrease, and then Fund 70, you see an uptick. So on the bottom, those the graphs represent each of the different funds. And again, this is the projection summary with the data that supports the graph. Here's our current year budget with our ending fund balance estimates. So our assumptions start with our current budget, and then based on the assumptions applied to this budget is how we look at our graphs. And those assumptions are for our tax revenue. We know what our estimated EAV is. We do have our CPI for 2023 at 1.4. Then we know our next 2 years are going to be 5. The blue numbers are our assumptions, so 3% for 2026, and then 2% reverting kind of back to the mean for 27 and 28. Our other assumptions are new property at $5 million. And then we're making the assumption of 2% increase in EAV every year. And then the assumption that we keep our tax collection rate where it has been historically at 99.5%, which is it's an amazing tax rate collection for all of the citizens of Mokina that pay the property taxes. So that's a great indication of a healthy community. Okay. And then other non-revenue assumptions are impact fees, builder's fees remain flat. We do see interest income increasing because of the rise in interest rates and then decreasing in 2025 and then flatten out. Student registration fees remain the same. We do have a little bit of state funding increase every year, and then we taking out of the budget all of the federal funding that we got due to the ESSER funds, the federal funds. And also in the O&M fund, we put 50,000 of state aid in every year, and rentals increase. Our transportation fund, our fees to stay the same, 2% increase in reimbursement, and then in our IMRF it stays flat. And this is the aggregate projections, the data that goes along with the revenue. And so you can see in the 84% of our revenue is locally funded. Again, it puts Mokina in a very healthy fiscal place where most of our money comes from our local property taxes, which are all paid. 9% from the state and 7% federally funded, which that number will come down next year as we lose our federal funds. And you can see the revenue projections increasing. The expenses, the assumptions that are made on the expense side, the assumptions are in the blue numbers. Majority of our expenses are our staff because we are a people business. And our certified staff, we have contracts. The blue numbers are assumptions. They're just the numbers that I used last year. Other than that, that's just the assumptions I used from last year. Classified staff, we have one more year of our contract. And then I just use the same assumptions that I used last year. And then we have some retirements. People leave, are paid higher and come in paid lower. So we have some retirement adjustments. We did build in because we don't know what staffing is going to look like if we have influx of students. We do have a little bit of buffer with one extra staff person per year the next 2 years. And then the other big expense is health insurance. 15% bump in health insurance would be a significant number. Our total salary budget's over 12 million. Our health insurance budget at about 1.8 million. And then our expenses and the ed fund, it's really all of the different object codes. What we're taking out are our expenses that we had put in for our ESSER money for our federal big increase in income, bringing that back out. And then in data form, and then you can see we do have one drop off in FY24, and that is all of the ESSER funds coming out and our Fund 21 projects that we're scheduled to be paying for in 23. So you can see that almost 60% of our budget is in our people and 15% in our capital projects, which are pretty significant work that we're doing on our buildings. Okay, and that's the aggregate. So that is the 5-year financial projections in totality. Okay. Any questions?
Do you take in the budget process any unfunded legislative changes into account anywhere in the budget?
I do not. Yeah, I just, because most of them are
Unfunded.
they're unfunded, and until they're actually written and have an impact. For example, when they removed tort in FY20, so we had built in our budget, we always had in the tort fund. Now we're not using the tort fund, and that is all stacked in the education fund. So that was a big shift, but it was really kind of after it was passed and pushed down to us, and then we implemented it in our budget. The expenses and revenue was still, it didn't impact that. It was just how we structured the forms in which fund it was coming in and out of.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you anticipate any unfunded legislative changes that could greatly impact our budget in the next 5 years?
Always.
Yeah.
You know, it was some time ago that the state raised the minimum teacher salary to $40,000, which we are currently over. I would not be surprised if that gets revisited at some point and maybe perhaps a CPI factor added into that. There's always something, but it's hard to guess. You know, I know at the secondary level for high schools, there was a mandate dropped on them that doesn't take effect for another couple of years. It requires 2 years of the language. That's additional staffing for them. but it's hard to tell until the bill actually has something that has some sort of final form. You really can't guess. But that's the reason why you have health and fund balances.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we have the 35% minimum to be able to absorb, what any curveballs that are thrown our direction.
It always just seems to be a challenge. I mean, there are things that have come up in the last few years that seem to be a challenge that, we haven't anticipated, and maybe it's just something going forward, just a suggestion that maybe we consider in the budget process. And I do have one other question. So thank you both. My other question is, I saw the 15% anticipated raise in healthcare
Yes.
insurance.
Yes.
And it went from 15 and then anticipated 5 and 5% increases. Is there a reason we didn't continue on with a higher than 5% increase when we have a 15% increase this year?
Sure. So I used a historical mean. The last 5 years, we've had increases. We've had 0, 0, 0.5, 1, and then we had a 9. So we do anticipate having a double-digit increase this year, and we're going to be able to negotiate that. And it's all relatively based on claims in our history. So we take a look at what we've had in the past, and that's why I put those numbers in there. It was really based on our historical perspective in healthcare.
Okay. It just seemed like a big.
It's going to be a big, and we know that going in. We already have a preliminary, so we do know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough to swallow. I mean, not anticipated. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? I do know that the bank I work at, we're looking at 17.5% right now. So I can guarantee you, no one got a 17.5% raise. So healthcare is a big issue right now across the board on many entities.
In fact, I believe that's tomorrow afternoon, isn't it?
Mr. Andreessen?
3:45, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Really? Okay, so I'm glad you got the prelims up. I believe we already have a whole bunch of teachers and staff that are going to be sitting there reviewing all that fun stuff, right?
Yes, we will.
Yes, we-
Yes, we will. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Don't think we planned that, Jim.
I'm actually
Wow.
just trying to follow Jen's lead. It's like she's got an idea. I'm not exactly sure what it is other than I love Springfield more days than not. And it's like she's got something. I'm honestly just curious. We gotta love rolling with stuff, right?
Yep. All right, any other questions on the strategic plan? No. Okay, moving on is Finance Committee update.
All right, well, Monday we talked about the capital plan, which we just had a presentation for, and the 5-year financial projection, which we had a presentation for. I don't have anything to add on those. And our next meeting will be April 17th at Switch from, what was it?
Yes.
So the 17th at 7 p.m. We'll be discussing the amended budget for fiscal year 2023. And I will have a technology review, and Mr. Luke will be here with us. So, that's all I got.
Lisa, next up, Dr. Cohen.
Okay, even though this is my third year in the district, it's still been a year filled with firsts, as so many things are coming back to us for the first time in the last 2 years. One of them being the Cure volleyball game. I want to echo Heather's comments about the volleyball game. It was a great game. It was a lot of fun, and pleased to say that no one was injured playing the game, myself included. We all managed to walk off the court, which is a blessing. I also want to thank our 6th grade teachers here, but also extend my gratitude to the entire junior high team. Dr. Orlandes, as part of his report, is going to talk a little bit about the progress they've made on the school improvement plan. And in particular, with regards to writing, I know last month we did do a school improvement plan update, but they just had some spring data. I just want to compliment them on the professional effort that's been put in by the entire school in the area of writing. This has been a total team effort. Every subject area has been working on that, pulling on the rope, and you're really seeing great things. The data that goes into the chart the high-level overview you see is not just writing in ELA, but it's writing in science, it's writing in social science. it's just really great to see the school come together around one skill and the amazing things that they're able to do with that singular focus. So kudos to them, our ELA group, and our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers. Galaxy Award nominations are now open. Those are open until the middle of next month. Those will be announced in May and presented at the June board meeting. Also included in my report, I updated or summarized some things in the capital plan having to do with safety and security. Dr. Shaw has some information in her report about the front doors here at Mokina Elementary. Those doors are in desperate need of replacement. It is an expensive project. It's not just removing a door frame, as the door frame is part of the entire window. That entire whole front has to come off and be replaced. But between salt and corrosion and just general warping of the front doors are becoming compromised. So we want to make sure those are secure. And Lincoln and I have a meeting tomorrow with the vendor looking at our panic buttons to make sure that we have adequate response in the event of an emergency. The panic buttons in each main office go right directly to 911 in a timely fashion. In the month of April, we have a regularly scheduled board meeting on April 19th. April 4th is the board election. 21 days are required to canvass the vote, so April 19th does not fall outside of that 21 days. So I was in conversation with Mr. Bush. I did email the board about establishing a date of April 26th for a board meeting to reorganize the Board of Education and swear in our new members. I want to wish all of our students good luck as it is IAR season that has already begun and continues over the next couple of weeks. And teachers in the back, 2 more weeks of spring break. Hold on, we're almost there. Warmer weather and sunshine is upon us. That concludes my report.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Cohen? No? Okay. Cover that special board meeting.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right, next up is Dr. Johnson.
Good evening. In my board report for this month, I did provide an overview of the professional learning that took place throughout the district in the month of March, including the early release activities that hopefully each principal will share an overview for you today. I also did include some information that our administrative team completed an administrative academy together, focusing on 504s and really strengthening the process and our services for students who receive 504 services within the district. I did provide for you an update regarding our MTSS committee and the work that we've done this past month and the work we're going to actually pick back up with on Friday for our next meeting. I provided for you, I'm so excited, next week, our high impact tutoring grant program starts next week. So I want to say thank you to all of the teachers and paraprofessionals that have stepped up to be tutors for the district through this grant. They've been going through training, they've been getting materials planned and prepped for their students, and so we're looking forward to that first session, which is quarter 4, starting next week, and that will go till the end of the year. And again, that's all paid for through a grant that we received from the State Board of Education. So we're looking forward to seeing that in action and student growth as a result of that. In addition, I provided to you a separate memo, but in my report as well, our recommendation from our ELA committee to move forward with recommending to you for adoption a K-5 ELA program for us to implement next school year. I do have a little bit more of a little presentation to kind of go over what that looks like from a big picture perspective, so you can kind of get an overview of what that program looks like, how it's structured, and what we're looking forward to in terms of implementation. So I am going to shift over to that, Lincoln, if you wouldn't mind. So my memo really went through and summarized our whole process start to finish, and I know I've been keeping you along the way and along the journey throughout the year, so I'm not so much going to focus on the process and the journey, but more of, again, just that high-level overview of the program so you have an understanding of what this program looks like, and all of the materials will be available in our district office until the next board meeting for you, the community, the teachers who want to take a look at the student materials, the teacher materials, to get a feel for what that looks like. So just a kind of a recap of where we've been over the past 2 years. This reading rope, I believe I've shown it to you before, but this is an image that's out in the literacy field right now that really looks at all the aspects that go into skilled reading. So it's breaking apart and thinking about all these components that are interwoven, and eventually as students become more skilled readers, those things become tighter and tighter and tighter. So as we look at materials and curriculum that are available, we're really honing in on these particular areas when we think about reading. Last year, we really focused K-5 on that bottom part of the reading rope. So we took a look at word recognition. So the phonemic awareness, the phonics, the sight words, and that's what we brought to you last year for implementation this year with the 95% core phonics program. So now we shifted our focus in professional learning as well as our focus in looking for materials to adopt on that top half of really thinking about comprehension from a language comprehension perspective, and then how those pieces come together to move towards reading comprehension. And so the materials that we're recommending for next year are really focusing on that comprehension side, which includes vocabulary, oral language structures, understanding semantics and syntax of the written word, coupled with writing and grammar as well. So we will keep on keeping on with our phonics materials that we adopted. This is really serving that need of that top half and thinking about the other aspects of literacy. So one of the things I want to kind of bring a big picture aspect to is thinking about college and career readiness. I know we're talking about kindergartners through 5th grade, but when we think about the curriculum or the programming that we adopt, we also think long term. And so Common Core standards have really identified for us what those capacity of literate individuals have, and we work backwards from that. And how do we start building that at the kindergarten level and continue to scaffold that through as we move up through the grade levels. These capacities that are identified of a graduate, of a literate individual, you're going to see again built from grade to grade in Open Up EL education that we are recommending. So you're going to see students demonstrating independence slowly over time as they move from grade to grade. We're going to see students build strong content knowledge. We're going to have them responding in various demands based on the audience that they may be presenting to or working with, the tasks that we're asking students to complete. We're looking for them to comprehend, but also critique what they're reading as well. We're looking for them to value evidence in all that they do, using technology strategically and capably, so to serve a purpose, as well as to come to understand other perspectives and cultures. And again, these are all from Common Core of what they defined when we think about building readers and writers over time to be ready for college and career. And all of these aspects are built very strategically and intentionally into this program. Common Core also provides for us, when Common Core first came out years ago, instructional shifts that are necessary in our classrooms to be able to bring Common Core standards to life. Truly, what does this mean? And they identified 3 shifts. These 3 shifts were then built into this program. Building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction was one of the big shifts that Common Core asked for districts to think about and move towards in terms of instruction. So we're looking in this program, you're going to see a balance of high-quality fiction and nonfiction text. A lot of times at elementary, traditionally, you would see text very fiction-based or story-based, but now we're looking for a balance of both. You'll notice at your seats tonight, I did put samples of books from each of the grade levels, and I strategically chose books from the same module so you could see how the program structures looking at fiction and nonfiction around the same topic. So you'll see those 2 books that you have, one's fiction, one's nonfiction, but it's all built around the same topic. We're looking for students to read and write and speak that's grounded in evidence from text. So that's a big piece. We want them to get into books. We want them to find evidence, and this program has them doing that on a daily basis. And then we also are looking for students to practice with complex text. Every child having access to complex text through scaffolds in the classroom, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. One of the other pieces that I did want to point out and celebrate about this program as well, if you are unfamiliar, there's a group called Ed Reports that is a non-for-profit that researches and really hones in on high quality instructional materials that are available in the field in ELA, math, science, social studies, foundational skills. Educators review products and programs and materials based off of a rubric, and they look at text quality and complexity with alignment to standards. They look to see if are the programs building knowledge with the texts that are in front of students and the tasks that we're asking them to do. And they also look at instructional supports and visibility. This program was highly rated, one of the most highly rated programs through Ed Reports in all of those areas for each of the grade levels. So when we think about our Illinois Learning Standards, which are built from the Common Core, this program is built around the standards, not aligned to the standards. And that's a really good differentiation and an important piece to think about. Oftentimes we see something was built and, oh yeah, this matches this standard. Oh, I can see where this matches that. But this was actually built from the ground up around the standards as opposed to just kind of finding where those things align. So like I mentioned earlier, you're going to see this aligned to reading literature standards, informational text standards, foundational skills, specifically to fluency, since we have those other areas covered with 95%, writing, language and grammar, and speaking and listening. And all of the texts that students will be experiencing in their actual real books, like you see right in front of you, are aligned specifically to the grade level complexity bands that Common Core asks students to be reading in to be considered grade level. So how does the curriculum then specifically address aspects of the standard? I'm going to do a couple quick hits of what reading looks like through the program at a K-5 perspective. In terms of text complexity, students are going to have frequent use of grade level appropriate complex text at all grade levels. In grades K through 2, you're going to notice students diving into read alouds with their teacher because most times their decoding ability isn't at the same level as their comprehension. They can do a lot more with comprehension than they can actually physically do reading. So we're reading text with them to grow their comprehension. So when their decoding matches, it comes to that perfect match. Vocabulary, students will be working with academic and content-based vocabulary all the time. Attention is really going to be on figuring out words from context and words parts as opposed to just memorizing. We're really trying to give them the tools. If you don't know a word, how can you go about figuring that out? How can we look at context? How can we look at root words or prefixes and suffixes to support our understanding of what words are? Students will be engaging in close reading, even starting in kindergarten, with teachers when they're going to really be digging into text for multiple reads with text-dependent questioning. Volume of reading, as you can see, there's going to be lots of books that students are going to have access to through whole group. And then, as you saw in my memo, I'm also asking for us to build up our classroom libraries to support daily accountable independent reading. That's part of the program as well. Students will be researching and gathering evidence all of the time in their text before writing. And to address fluency, we're going to be seeing students have multiple reads of their text, so that repeated reading, which is a research-based strategy, and then instruction and feedback focused on aspects of reading fluency, such as rate, tone, and accuracy. In terms of writing, we talked a little bit about this earlier. One of the biggest shifts in writing is writing that really reflects content understanding and is rooted in the text that they read. So their writing is going to support content knowledge, and they're going to be taking that new knowledge and synthesize that into the writing that they do even in kindergarten. The aspects of writing that the program will be addressing is instruction on writing skills, so things like writing introductions, having a sound body paragraph, using transitions effectively in your writing, as well as instruction with approaches to writing. So really honing in on the craft of writing, how to gather evidence, how to make your writing sound and more fluid as you're working through that. And then writing fluency. So we've talked lots about writing, lots of writing, but they have short writes almost every day when they're writing in response to the text they're reading, as well as longer pieces that are aligned to the genre and the standards. So more that traditional longer pieces of writing aligned to those standards. In addition, they'll also, oral processing of ideas before writing is an instructional strategy called oral rehearsal. that you'll see students doing before they're set off to independently write. They're thinking about what they're going to write about. They talk about a peer so that when they go to put pen to paper, they have an understanding and they know what they're going to be writing. And then students will be working through the writing process that we're familiar with as well throughout the program, the drafting, the revising, and the editing. In terms of the language standards, grammar is going to be addressed through the grade level grammar standards. And the unique thing about the program is then they immediately apply it into writing or speaking. So they learn about, for example, I was just in a third grade classroom a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about verb tense and the understanding of verb tense. And we were talking about whatever the verb was in the past, present, and future tense. But the reason we were doing that is so they could use that understanding to write informational paragraphs, because informational paragraphs are typically written in the present tense. And so we were talking about, like, there's a reason for it. It's not just to fill out a worksheet, but we're doing it because it helps us as a writer. And so that is one of the big things that stands out. Writing conventions, again, we'll be working on those grade level conventions with immediate usage into reading and writing. I'm learning about capitalizing the pronoun I in kindergarten because I'm going to write an opinion statement that starts with I like. So you've got that immediate application into what they're doing. And then in terms of academic and domain-specific vocabulary, again, we're pulling that out of text. They're applying that in their writing, and students will move through something called a language dive throughout the modules that really hones in on how language is structured and the vocabulary and how to really decipher those complex or compelling sentences that they encounter in their mentor text. Speaking and listening, students will be collaborating and interacting all of the time. So they're going to be practicing their oral language. They're going to be practicing their discussion and collaboration skills, whether that's through processing reading or preparing to writing. Certain protocols will be taught to students in terms of how to collaborate. If you don't agree with someone, how do you go about having that discussion? What are those conversation cues that I would have in my pocket if, at kindergarten level, I don't agree with my peer? What does that look like? And students will be presenting work both formally and informally in every grade level throughout the year as well to practice those speaking skills. The program only looks at a multidimensional view of student achievement in these three areas. So not only are we looking for mastery of knowledge and skills aligned to those literacy grade levels of critical thinking, your standards, clearly communicating, we're also looking at the level of work and high quality student work that students are doing throughout the program, as well as building character in terms of like what are those characteristics of an effective learner: perseverance, collaboration, initiative, working to become ethical people through the way we have discussions together. We're learning about how to have respectful dialogue, as well as contributing to a better world. And you'll see an example of what that looks like through their the projects that they'll be completing. The program is really rooted in content-based literacy, which is a highly researched instructional practice that has our students really rooting everything they do in content, in some sort of content. And so that, again, it's an approach that we use to help students build literacy as they learn about the world. And I did provide just a little bit of a quote from Common Core that specifically talks about the importance of having very a sequential and systematic way to develop that knowledge that's developmentally appropriate in topics from kindergarten on, so that we're building that content knowledge as well. And again, this program will address that. The curriculum is based on topics. Students will be working to build knowledge of their world by reading multiple texts on a topic. And they'll be studying that same topic over many weeks and in many ways in all aspects of what they're doing. So they'll really leave being experts, on those topics. So what does this really look like in practice? Each grade level will have 4 learning modules that span about 6 to 9 weeks for the course of their year. Like I said, each module is going to be based on a compelling topic that's aligned either to the science or social studies standards for the grade level. The module will end in like a culminating task that has students take everything that they've been learning, put that together through more of an application. So it's not just reading and write to read and write, but we're doing it for a purpose. There are specific targets then for each module that are aligned to the standards. And then, as I've talked about, lots of books and text, whether that's books or articles, that students will be reading very closely with their teacher to practice those standards and to learn more about the topic that they're studying. Here are the topics for each of the different grade levels. You'll see they start, they're very developmental to where students are in their understanding of the world and their understanding of themselves, and broaden in perspective as they move from grade to grade. So you'll see kindergarten starting there with tools and play. They like to play, and so you're seeing, that's where you start with kindergarten, and by the time they go all the way through 5th grade, they're studying deeply the impact of natural disasters on different places. Within each module, there's 3 units. So Unit 1 is building background knowledge and literacy skills for that particular module. Unit 2 is deeper learning, where they're really taking that study to a deeper level with their reading and more application to writing. And then Unit 3 is where all of those things are brought together, and students are more synthesizing and doing a deeper application of the skills and the topic together. There's multiple opportunities for assessment, both formative and summative. There's formative assessment ongoing throughout the modules, which include observation, student workbook pages, homework, checklists that teachers can use, as well as summative assessments that are built into each of the modules as well. And a really cool piece that is built into is students are reflecting and self-assessing on their learning targets throughout the modules as well to see, if they're seeing their learning themselves. Each lesson provides teachers with lesson notes that talk about the background information of the lesson, the why, the targets, what it's building from, where it's going over time. The lesson also has the specific learning targets connected to the standards. Each lesson is built around 3 parts: an opening, work times, closing, and assessment. Like I mentioned earlier, habits of character are embedded to connect that social emotional aspect of learning to the academic learning. So students know how to collaborate with peers, how to care for their classroom, how to care for materials. And then each lesson also provides scaffolds utilizing the Universal Design for Learning, UDL. You might be familiar with that for diverse learners, as well as specific scaffolds and supports for English language learners at the 3 different low, medium, and high language need. So I want to give you a quick example of kind of what this looks like, and I did provide an overview for you of each module for each grade level in this red folder for you to view. If you are curious of what each module looks like, the topics, a summary of it. But here's a 1st grade example. In Module 3, they're going to be, the big topic is birds' amazing bodies. They have essential questions that kind of drive that unit. Their end of module performance task that they're working towards throughout the module is to create informational cards that demonstrate their expertise about how a bird uses its body part to survive. And they'll have a riddle, they'll have a read aloud, and they'll also be talking about how that body part aids in the survival of the bird that they're studying. That will be like their informational text and their informational card. You can see a list here of all of the books that they will be working through to learn their literacy skills, their writing skills, as well as to build knowledge around this topic. This just kind of walks through, and you'll see when you're able to look through those how each unit kind of builds. So each paragraph is roughly what the unit looks like. I will not read all of this for you at this time, but I encourage you to take a look at it because you can really see how that module builds towards that end piece and how it beds the literacy, reading, and writing skills. This slide you were not meant to read, but I wanted to show you these were the standards then aligned that are happening and instructed upon throughout the module. So lots are happening aligned to the Common Core standards for the grade level on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, you can see specifically either the science or social studies standard that this module or standards is addressing. So very robust in the skills that the students are working through and all of those domains of literacy. And then a 4th grade example, just because I want to show you like 2 ends of the spectrum. 4th grade, module 4, they're going to be studying the American Revolution and they're taking a look at perspectives and how different people through in the colonies and their perspectives, and what that looks like in the revolution. And at the end of the whole module, they're considering perspectives from both the patriot and the loyalist perspective. They've been collecting evidence through the books that they've been reading and the skills that they've been learning, and they end up writing an opinion piece about which side they would support if they were living back in those times, using evidence that they've been learning throughout. And again, a list of the texts, a summary for you, and you'll find that in your packet if you're interested in looking a little bit more about how that whole module builds towards that kind of final performance task. Again, a breadth, if you want to go to the next one, a breadth of standards that the module is really working on with students, and that specific alignment then to the grade level social studies standards for that particular module. So I know that was a lot, but I wanted to at least provide you with, like, what is this program? I mean, it's a big, important decision for our district because it really will set the stage for us and our literacy work for years to come. So I felt it was important to give you that overview of really how this program is built and structured, its alignment to standards, strong instructional practices, so that you had that information as you look at the stuff that I provided for you. But as you dig a little bit deeper, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to sit down, take a look at things a little bit more with you. If you want to pass around the books that I provided too, just so everyone can kind of get a perspective of what those texts look like starting in kindergarten. I think you've got Llama Wants to Share all the way to, I don't know who's got the 5th grade, but, really looking at how those books grow with students and how they mature through the grade levels and in complexity. So any questions I can answer for you?
We're talking about professional development.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yep. Yes. I am 99.9% sure that I will be able to do that. So I've been talking with the company quite a bit about, obviously we'll wait till after your approval in April, but like what the possibilities could look like for implementation and launch professional development this spring, as well as teachers getting all their materials, and then what that would look continued throughout next year as well. Yes, it's a pretty tight timeline, but we did it last year and we will do it again. So yeah, yep, good question.
Question.
Yep.
Is the pace and content the same at every grade level like Eureka Math is?
The pace, yes. So every grade level has the 4 modules with the 3 units inside of that. So that is the same. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by content?
Just every math class in, first grade, or every first grade teacher uses the same content.
Yes.
The same books.
Yes.
Do teachers have any autonomy in choosing books? That
So from a whole group perspective, the teachers will be using the same text. I'll be working with the teachers from each grade level then to curate the classroom libraries. Those will be consistent within the classrooms, but the teachers will be the ones to pick those books that they feel will be best matched to the students in the classroom. So from like a whole group perspective, we're all having that same experience, but then when it comes time for like small group and independent application, the teachers will be able to work with me then to create those books or those book bins pending your approval for the classroom libraries. Thanks.
The tutoring.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Is that something that we or the teachers choose the children that need that support, or is that something that parents can reach out and?
Sure. So through the grant, we had to identify our criteria for students to be able to do that. We did that together as an administrative team, and then through that, our administrators took that criteria and went back to the teachers or the interventionists and kind of worked through matching students with tutors based on need from those particular criteria. So it wasn't parent-driven because there was a specific set of criteria through the grant that we had to work through in selection.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. little bit different than like traditional tutoring maybe that we're used to, where it is more parent driven. But parents could accept or not accept the invitation.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson. Next up is Ms. Roney.
Evening. As you saw in my board report, I can give a public kudos to Ms. Heather Sullivan for her work with Kaylee Hickey on developing a presentation for students in Mrs. Potter's second grade classroom. It was an honor to be invited to see her speak, and students really were very engaged in what Kaylee had to say, just explaining her stuttering condition. And what she needs. They were really excited to learn about that and learn what they can do to support their friends. So that was really wonderful. Self-advocacy on the students' part and wonderful support on the part of our super awesome speech language pathologist team, who are also here in attendance this evening. And one thing that I neglected to put in my board report is that it was School Social Worker Week, March 5th through 11th. And we have two of our very venerable social workers with us here tonight. I want to thank Susanna Brodzinski she's one of our new social workers here at Mokina Elementary School. Stacy Kittler, who is a Mokina icon, and I think has mentored every single social worker to have ever come through our doors in this district. Heather Rossi over at Mokina Intermediate School, Jenna Enns, and Victoria Toch at the junior high. They do so much more than service minutes in an IEP. They are the first line of defense if there's an emergency or a crisis with any student, with any staff member. They're just really an awesome team of individuals, and I'm so proud to work with them and continue to work with them as well. So thank you.
For Ms. Roney? No. Okay, moving on then. Next up is Dr. Shaw.
Thank you. This month we've got quite a few information items to be followed. We have the architect and the engineer team are still here in case there's any questions regarding those information items. We've got a flooring project that we're asking is information. Next month we'll ask to issue an RFP. The flooring, there's some pictures in there with some broken floor tiles, some safety issues that we need to take care of, right? It also includes carpeting in this room, which may take off some of the brightness from the white. So that is in that flooring package. We've got a building envelope, which includes some tuck pointing and some lintel repair work. We've got the front door is an information item. And then annually we ask for summer helpers and some painting. And then we have our non-union staff members for next month. So those are the information items that are in here. And then we have the action items or student fees, which is from last month with no change in the student fees. There is a change in student lunch prices based on the National School Lunch Program. And then buses. So I put in a memo about buses where the board's approved the lease for the buses. We're asking for permission to purchase the buses in anticipation of asking for those leases with a tremendous increase in the cost of bus and bus lease. I was ready for the question, maybe from somebody I know. What is that true interest cost, and can we just buy them? I was ready for both of those questions, and Dr. Cohen and I looked at it, and we presented it at the Finance Committee. We looked at the fund balances, we looked at the projections in the transportation fund alone, and then we looked at what that projection looked like if we actually purchased the bus. We do dip under the 35% in year one, and then we start and creep back up because we take away some of the expenses. So we have those fund balances coming back up within our parameters. Okay, please, go ahead. Yeah.
We're gonna save the taxpayer $74,000.
Yes, that
We're
number.
trying to be good stewards of your money, trusting us, we're trying to do good things. So you're right, where it makes sense, use other people's money. If if the interest rate is justified. In this case, we can do it ourselves and save taxpayer money on interest, and we can put it towards the students and the programs where it really deserves to be. Thank you for looking into it. I'm glad we can take care of it.
You're welcome. And on that note, I did make the one line item, a single sentence with spaces on both sides of it, so that $74,000 in interest was, I tried to highlight it, that was the savings by purchasing. And then what we also took a look at is what happens in year 6. So in year 6, if we don't have any expense with cost, it might be some mechanical work or warranty work because we're now in year 6. But other than that, we should just see fund balance rising at that point in time. For the first 5. Yes. Yes. Thank you. And yeah, just one last thing is on the, as far as the projections in the presentation, the individual funds are also in there in case anybody wanted to look at the individual funds. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Shaw? No? Okay. Director of Technology.
Good evening. I apologize. My report was a lot shorter, but it was brought to my attention late afternoon a very, very great and very fair question about our action item about the Chromebook purchase. So just to review it real fast, up on the table as an action item is the purchase of the incoming 6th grade class Chromebooks, including the Google licenses, a case, and the 3-year warranty. And the question was about why the warranty, okay? So very fair, we did some digging and we did some compiling of data and we looked at it. And talking with our vendor last year, McKean paid $53.50 for a 3-year warranty. It was supposed to come with the case. As we know, Stay Mobile went bankrupt. Lenovo, we were lucky enough Lenovo is honoring that warranty right now, as of right now, but we never received the cases. So we end up buying the cases anyways. The students need a case for the Chromebook. So in this year, the cost of the case stayed the same, still $30. And then talking with Saul from Linus, our vendor, thank you, Saul, he was able to put in a call to Lenovo and actually reduce the 3-year warranty from $75 down to $55 a piece. So if you do the math, we're only paying $1.50 more a Chromebook than what we paid last year. It comes out to just a little less than $300 more than what we paid for the incoming 6th grade class for the devices. The real question is why the warranty? And if we look into it, from the Stay Mobile contract, from the devices we sent in from 9/11/2020 to 4/29/2022, so about a year and a half, we sent in 440 devices for repair, for warranty repair. That's a lot. It comes out to just a little under 300 devices a year, right? I took a sample, 40-line sample, the Stay Mobile Excel work file. 18 of those 40 were for screen repair alone. 13 were listed as pending, so Stay Mobile will never put a reason. They never got to why or what was wrong with the actual computer. But if I was to put my money on it, I would guess most of those are going to be screen repairs as well. The remainder, 9 were listed as miscellaneous repairs, ranging from motherboard repair, which is a fold-out repair of the unit, and up to like trackpad and keycaps, stuff like that, just miscellaneous stuff. Looking at this year alone, from the first day of school, we had 23 screen repairs just at MES and MIS combined. Obviously, those were not under warranty, so we had to do the repairs in-house. We've already cannibalized all of our spare stock, so I ended up having to buy screens. I had to buy screens on 2 separate occasions. The first time, they were $99 a piece. I bought 10. They came in less than a week. The most recent purchase was 5. Last week, I purchased 5 more screens. The prices already went up to $105. I made the purchase March 9th, and the ETA is not until April 20th for those screens. So it seems to be getting worse and more expensive on that end. Same thing with the network cards. They're rather cheaper, but they've doubled in price, and it's another piece that we've run out of stock of. Talking with the techs, it takes about 2 interrupted hours to do a Chromebook repair, up to two hours. On average, it takes about an hour. You got to figure out what's wrong, because honestly, sometimes the ticket just says, hey, the Chromebook doesn't work. Go get the Chromebook, you have to troubleshoot it, figure out what's wrong, take it apart, replace the item, put it back to part, test it to make sure it works. So if you look at an hour on average, and then if we do the math and say 300 devices need to be warranty worked a year, on average of an hour, it's 300 hours, and that comes down to 37 and a half days, 8-hour days total, that the techs would be doing just straight up warranty work. If you look at our current ticket situation, from the first day of school, there was 1,319 tech tickets were opened. We were able to close 1,224 of them, and honestly, I don't like having about 100 tickets open. We can do better. The fact of the matter is, we just don't have the staffing to do warranty work as of right now. So that would justify the cost of the warranty. Yeah, any questions on that?
Thanks for saving the $4,000.
Yeah, $3,900. Thank you, Saul, if you're watching. I did invite me to the live stream. You said you would try to make it. I appreciate that call. I know that was awesome. Then all I have left is the battery backup we installed at MES over a month ago. Haven't lost internet since, right? Yeah, everything's been running smoothly. It was awesome. And something not on the agenda, I did go to Brainstorm in Wisconsin recently. Got back yesterday. Learned a lot of things. It was great. It's just surreal, the shift of sessions. Years ago, it used to be about how to prevent cyber incidents. In almost all the sessions I attended, we were victims of a cyber incident, and this is how we recovered. So it's definitely out there, and we have to be prepared. So that is all I have for my report.
Questions for Mr. Hanson? Okay. We will move on to Illinois Area Special Education with Ms. Briscoe. Yeah, we'll do those two. Okay. We'll start with, I think we went with Mrs. Chorley last month, so we'll go with Mr. McAtee this month.
Thank you very much. Just a couple quick additions. We had our concert, our March Melodies concert last week. It was phenomenal, great attendance again. We had a sold out gymnasium, so it was great to see, all of our musicians performing. I did link a couple of videos, so if you didn't have a chance to enjoy their performances, they are on my reports. Mentioned one of our 5th grade students, Sophia Kirkhab, entered into the Mokina Fire Department essay contest. She came in as the first runner-up, so we're very proud of her for everything that she did. We were at the fire department last night for the ceremony, so it was a great event. We have our family drawing night through the PTA coming up in April. I believe it's April 13th, so much more information will be coming out regarding that. And the last thing I do want to mention, Dr. Johnson mentioned all the great PD that we went through today. Our math teachers, we met by content areas today. So all of our ELA teachers met, all of our math teachers met. And for a solid hour and a half, our math teachers talked about nothing but writing and how they can incorporate writing into math and how much that is going to help the students understand and get a better grasp of the concept. So it's just amazing to see the changes in mindset that's happening now. We've stole quite a bit from the junior high. They're doing a lot of the hard work, and we're reaping some of the benefit of that. So thank you, Mike, and thank you, junior high teachers. But it's just amazing. An hour and a half, math teachers talking about nothing but writing. So it was really a wonderful conversation. That's all I got. Any questions?
Okay, Dr. Leonidas?
A couple of things to start with. I hope we enjoy fantastic from 2020. On stage. Nice gesture. We had our 3 permits, so I want to thank
for putting on that tournament. This looks like they had a fantastic time. It's always a fun event. That's what it's about. It's not fun. It's always fun when we got
their uniforms. They make their own uniforms. Of the our data collection of 3, or actually we're going to have 4 data collections on our CEO. Goals for the years, our school improvement plan was to work on writing, as Mr. McAtee just said. I know we're working on that at the elementary school as well, and Dr. Johnson's talking about with the ELA adoption at K-5. So we've really put in our collection from the beginning of the year to now. We've been massaging the rubrics. We have been working on our expectations from kids barely understanding what a claim, evidence, and reasoning is, to at this point in time, you see the growth in every content area from fall to spring to this spring collection. There's been significant growth. We have some other graphs that show you from grade level to grade level, where we had literally slivers of kids who were meeting the expectation to now it's over a third to a half, and sometimes 3/4. Thank you to 6. I think today one of the things that Dr. Cohen mentioned and Mr. McAtee just mentioned is that every core area is teaching writing. Every core area, and it's weird to do it in math. I have my math teachers back there, and they're out back there. They looked at me 2 years ago, I guess now. No, it is very important that we do it, and I know throughout the year, the reason our data collections kind of, they've evolved throughout the year because we have to keep increasing our expectations from data collection to data collection. So it's not a perfect, this isn't something I would put in my dissertation, but that is really meaningful, and it shows that if we all row in the same direction, if we all pull that rope in the same direction, we really can make some impressive strides. So, and if you go all the way back to why we did this was because on IAR, and we looked at our IAR data, and we were, I'm just going to say abysmal in writing. And this, I'm actually looking forward to see what we're going to be able to do at the end of the month on that writing section. I don't know if the teachers feel that way. Look at Mr. Broom back there. But I'm anticipating some pretty tremendous growth there as well. I don't think we could all do the work that we've been doing to this point, and it's really everybody in the building working on this together. PE and Exploratory are talking about this. They're not writing as much, but they're doing the thought process, because that's our main thrust. Is this starts as a thought process. You make a claim, you come up with your evidence, and you have reasons for it. And the teachers back there you see, and the teachers in my building have all been working to try to really,
dovetail off of that, I had a conversation with Craig Martinez today, the 8th grade, he's the ELA department chair, 8th grade teacher, and he pointed out 2 things that were of note to me. One was kids are now writing 3 to 5 paragraph essays, where once they were writing paragraphs. the level of rigor has really increased. As writing frequency has increased, their skills have increased, and so they were able to ask them to do more and more complex tasks. So that's been important. But also in breaking down the PSAT that our 8th graders took for their high school placement, while it's only been one semester's worth of work, typically our reading score, our aggregate student reading scores would be higher than our writing scores, and this year that flipped. The writing score overtook the reading score, and that's just after one semester's worth of work this year. So again, kudos. It goes to show, the work they're doing is making impact.
I would say our expectation will continue to grow. We're going to take one more data collection at the end of the year to try to kind of finalize where we want our rubrics to be. But we anticipate, we're making some assumptions that with the work that they're doing over at MIS each year, with the more writing that they're doing, that we'll be able to keep increasing our expectations in this area and be able to give better and better writers. And that's just going to help them in high school like you just wouldn't believe. Because more and more writing is expected at the high school level, and then on. Know that the work isn't done yet. A lot of work to do. I think you can see from that. Going to keep going. To Dr. Johnson for all of her help, and definitely to the.
Questions for Dr. Leonard? Okay, Mrs. Shirley, bring it home.
To kind of dovetail off of the work that the junior high and the intermediate school is doing, I was really thrilled to be looking through the resources, the resource for adoption, and that is one of the standards in third grade, social studies standards in third grade, that they will develop claims using evidence from multiple sources. So if this, is approved, it just kind of flows right into what the work that you guys are doing. So that was really exciting to see. I was at the fire department last night as well. Our students were coloring, so they had a coloring contest. Paisley Talbot in first grade was second runner-up, and Parker Marino, and also in first grade, actually won. So it was great to go to. I love going to that event. It's very small, it's very short, but it's just really a nice community event, kind of tying our schools in with our fire department. Today we also had 2 third grade classrooms bring back wax museums, Mrs. Ruth and Mrs. Janes, in the South Gym. It was very well attended. Our students were amazing. They really got into it. I was mostly impressed with their speaking skills. What they were able to remember and just say, not really have to look at the cards too much, and just being able to talk about their person. I was just so impressed, and I received a lot of really positive comments from not only parents but grandparents as well. So it was a great event. I also want to acknowledge our MES social workers, Mrs. B, Mrs. Kittler, the icon. I know I'm never going to let that go now. They do way more than service students. They're the grease that make these wheels run. So we're very appreciative of them. It's also Music in Our Schools Month. So I want to recognize Miss Clifford, our music teacher, who does amazing things with our students in music class. I am not musical. Every time I go in there, I just learn something new that I didn't pick up when I was a student, because her teaching style is so engaging. So I just wanted to give a recognition to Ms. Clifford. We're very grateful to her. We had kindergarten information night last week. It wasn't as well attended as in years past, but I think that's because they don't need to bring anything in. There's nothing drawing them in, like their residency or registration papers. So we're brainstorming some ways to increase attendance next year. I want to thank Mrs. Blank and Miss Matt. They did their annual slideshow presentation. We did 2 of them. That was great, and every kindergarten teacher was here, which I think was a first since I've been here, so it was great. It was really an exciting night.
our family night, I know I reported out, but I just have to emphasize, it was insanely attended. We had over 500 children, so that's siblings. It's not just our students, it does include siblings. But it was, I knew it would be well attended, but not that well attended. But it just goes to show how much our parents want to be back in our schools. So, so we are looking forward to finding more opportunities for that and planning a bigger and better event next year. So early dismissal today. We had a great celebration of learning about foundational reading skills and laying the foundation for our resource adoption in the fall with keys to early literacy. We did a gallery walk. Everybody brought an artifact of something that they did this year, new, that they were really proud of. Every single teacher brought something, including Mr. H from art, which was exciting. And grade levels took turns. We had the room set up like this, and they would walk and talk to other grade levels, which ties in nicely with our strategic, not our strategic plan, but our school improvement plan to develop collaborative teachers. This might not be going into their classroom, but they definitely learn from each other today. There were a lot of really great discussions, conversations. You know, we're going to be making something for all the classrooms based off of what one teacher made. So it was a great opportunity to just collaborate and learn from each other. And we had cake. We had for celebrate our learning. It was great. It was a great afternoon today. And I also want to recognize some of our teachers, kindergarten teachers that went to the ASCD kindergarten conference. Miss Matt is a board member for this organization for kindergarten for the conference. And our two of our new teachers went. Mrs. Okrasinski, Miss Wardell went, Miss Matt, of course, Mrs. Morrill, Mrs. Robert went this year. So that was great for them to be able to go back and do that again too. And then finally, I want to recognize Jamie Andreessen, Amanda McManus, Liz Cantori, and Kate Gersh, because during our Read Across America week, we had our book fair, which brought in over 10,000 scholastic dollars for just our school. So that's really, it's huge. That's probably the most we've had since I've been here. So they did a phenomenal job. It was hopping. They were sweating. It was funny. They did a great job. So yes, that brings me to the end of my report.
Any questions?
Okay, now that I know everyone's paying attention, including myself, we will now go to Anna in Lincoln Way Area Special Education.
All right, good evening, everyone. On the finance side, there is nothing significant to report. Everything looks good so far. Action items, we approved a donation of St. Mary's Mokina Knights of Columbus of $1,000. We approved some new software with Link, L-I-N-Q. Approved Infantech. We approved transportation ESY rate to include regular compensation plus an additional $40 per full day or $20 per half day. And then we approved a termination of an employee. And then for excitement, we received a bid on transportation, but it was really kind of confusing. We didn't have our representative from 210 there to help explain what was going on. We were kind of surprised as the governing board with this, and we didn't have representation. And I just heard from Dr. Cohen tonight that Dr. Tingley will be coming in to talk to the governing board next month. So hopefully I can update you a little more with what's going on, because I'll be honest, the governing board wasn't happy with what was presented. So we're hoping for something else to happen next month to change things a little bit. And that is all I have to report. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Anna. We had one FOIA request. I believe that was filled. Okay. We will move that. On to action requests. Approval of the previous minutes.
To approve minutes from the February 15th, 2023 regular and closed session meetings as presented.
Second.
All right, vote, Jamie. On the second. Please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yeah.
Mrs. Briscoe? Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Okay, motion passed. Next up is district bills. Mrs. Staley.
Yep, I reviewed those and had all of my questions answered. Thank you, Dr. Shaw. I move to approve the monthly bills as presented.
By Anna. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Briscoe? Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski? Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is personnel.
I move to approve personnel recommendations 6C 1 through 8 as presented, subject to successful background check if applicable.
Second.
Second by Mr. Everett. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski? Mr. Andreessen?
The teacher's earning penny, congratulations. Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Okay, motion passed. On that note, being married to a teacher, it is a big deal whenever you get tenure. I know that for a fact. So I just want to call out those teachers that just got approved tenure or staff. Lauren Bullington, Esther Dare, Jenna Enns, Carrie Grabowski, Fabiola Huerta, Melissa Martin, Lindsay Robert, and Monica Swift. So congratulations again. I apologize if I butchered any names. Dr. Rolanitis knows not to call me for graduation ceremony. I am not the guy for that job. So again, thanks, or congratulations to all those staff. Well done. Next up is the consent agenda.
I move to approve consent agenda items 6B 1 through 2 as presented.
Second.
Second by Mr. Everett. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski? Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes. Okay, motion passed. Next up is the approval of Chromebooks purchase.
Approve the purchase of 195 new Lenovo 500E third generation Chromebooks at a cost not to exceed $94,282.50 as presented.
Zelinski, any questions? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Final item is the bus lease / purchase.
I move to approve the purchase of 4 gasoline buses at a price not to exceed $131,575 per bus as presented.
Second by Mr. Andreessen. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Passed. We'll soon be the owners of 4 new buses. All right. Items for the April meeting, I believe, Dr. Shaw, you got several items that are going to come to vote. Dr. Johnson's got some curriculum stuff, so we got quite a bit of items to approve for that meeting, unless there's anything else that anyone wants to call out. Okay. Follow-up items, I don't think there's anything. Follow-up for the good of Mokina.
So on Saturday, April 1st, the Mokina Lions Club will be having their annual Easter egg hunt. I would encourage families as young as they're barely walking up for 8th grade to be there no later than 11:30, 11:45. Once it starts at 12, it's over in about 30 seconds. But if you really want to have some fun, watch it again in slow-mo. It's like Braveheart. They're just running. I did that one year. It was hilarious. It was awesome. There's also going to be some special guests there. It's a fun time. It's free, and it's something a lot of kids tend to enjoy every year. So let's hope for good weather on Saturday, April 1st. Thank you.
Mr. Bush, I have one thing. Next Wednesday, the 22nd, I'll have the privilege of attending my last Three Rivers Division meeting.
This one is going to be kind of unusual because a friend of the board's, Dr. Courtney Orzell, is going to be the guest speaker. And she is going to be telling how districts can build a strong community relationship as their topic. So I'll bring back some notes from that and present it to the board at the April meeting.
Anything else for the good Mokina? Okay, hearing none, I move that the Board of Education adjourn to closed session for purposes of personnel.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dell. Any questions? Please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen?
Good night.
Mrs. Briscoe? Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Riedel?
Yes.
Mrs. Staley?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Okay, motion passed. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.